All right, everybody, welcome back. You're joining us for another deep dive, and today it's a big one.
It's a big one for sure. We're diving into the 2024 election, specifically Trump versus Harris.
Round two for these two.
Right.
And we're going beyond the headlines here, folks. We're going to be looking at what each candidate is really promising on the issues that matter most to you.
Exactly. We're talking immigration, the economy, healthcare.
Civil rights. You know, all the stuff that directly affects your life every day.
Absolutely.
So we're going deep, but we're going to keep it clear and unbiased, as always, so you can make an informed choice when you go to the polls.
That's right.
So let's kick things off with Trump. He's been hinting at, a continuation of his policies from his previous term, but what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, he's not just dusting off the old playbook here.
Really?
He's actually, proposed some new ideas. One of the things that he's been talking about is immigration. And he's floated the idea of, reviving that border wall.
Oh, yeah, the wall.
But this time, he's saying that the focus would be on using advanced technology for, surveillance and detection.
So, what are we talking about here? Like drones?
Drones, yeah.
Right.
AI-powered sensors, the whole shebang.
So a high-tech wall. Huh. That's interesting. What do you think about that? I mean, how might that play out in communities along the border?
Well, on one hand, it could mean increased security, which, some people would welcome. But on the other hand, there are concerns about privacy and, the potential for overreach.
Yeah, that's something to think about for sure. And how about the economy?
Yeah, well,
Any word on that?
Trump's talking about tax cuts again.
Oh, tax cuts are back.
But this time he's saying that he wants to target those tax cuts to specific industries, the ones that he thinks he can boost.
So, which industries are we talking about? And could these targeted tax cuts end up hurting other businesses, other sectors of the economy?
Well, manufacturing is a big one. He's really focused on, bringing jobs back to the U.S. And he thinks he can do that by offering tax breaks for companies that produce their goods domestically.
Okay, so that makes sense, but...
Yeah.
But there's a potential downside there.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely.
What do you see as the downsides there?
It could lead to trade wars.
Yeah.
And it could disadvantage businesses that rely on global supply chains.
Yeah, that makes sense. So winners and losers with that approach. Okay, what about law enforcement? Because that seems to be something that he's talking about a lot as well.
Absolutely. He's advocating for increased funding for police departments and stricter sentencing guidelines, especially for violent crimes.
And how's that going over?
Well, it resonates with voters who prioritize law and order, They like that tough-on-crime approach. But, critics are saying it could lead to mass incarceration and that it could disproportionately impact minority communities. It's a lot to consider there. Okay, so that's a glimpse at Trump's platform. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Kamala Harris. She's painting a very different picture for America. Her vision seems to be focused on social justice and equality.
Yeah, and that really comes through in her stance on voting rights. She wants to make it easier for people to vote.
So how's she going to do that?
Well, she's advocating for automatic voter registration for every eligible citizen, and she wants to make Election Day a national holiday. And on top of that, she wants to expand early voting options.
Okay, so those are some big changes to the voting system. What's the reasoning behind those changes?
Well, the idea is to increase voter turnout, particularly amongst communities that have been historically marginalized. Make it easier for them to get to the polls.
Okay, so potentially more people voting. I imagine there's some pushback on that, though, right? I mean, what kind of challenges might she face getting those changes implemented?
Well, critics argue that, these measures could make elections more vulnerable to fraud, although there's really no evidence to support widespread voter fraud as it stands.
Okay.
And then the other big debate is around her healthcare proposals.
Yes. Healthcare, always a hot-button issue.
She's been talking about moving towards a universal healthcare model, which would be a pretty big departure from the system we have now.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just break it down for us a little bit? What exactly does universal healthcare mean? I mean, how would that work for everyday people?
Well, in a nutshell, it means that everyone has access to healthcare regardless of their income or employment status.
Okay.
And the way that Harris is proposing to do this is that everyone would be automatically enrolled in a government-run health insurance plan, but private insurance would still be an option if you wanted to go that route.
So more people covered, potentially lower costs overall.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good, but I'm guessing it comes with a price tag, right?
Yeah, there would likely be higher taxes to fund it.
So that's the trade-off. Okay, and
Yeah.
what about her focus on labor? She's mentioned things like raising the minimum wage, strengthening unions. How might those initiatives impact the economy?
Well, the idea behind raising the minimum wage is to improve the lives of low-wage workers, right? Make sure that people can afford to live.
Makes sense.
But opponents argue that it could lead to job losses because, businesses might struggle to afford those increased labor costs.
Yeah, and the unions.
Her push for stronger unions is about giving workers more bargaining power, which could lead to better wages, better benefits, but it also might increase the cost of goods and services.
So again, we're seeing these two very different visions for America. Trump focusing on economic growth through deregulation and, a tough stance on immigration and crime. And then we have Harris pushing for greater social and economic equality, possibly through more government involvement. It's a lot for voters to weigh. What stands out to you as the biggest point of difference between these two candidates?
For me, it's the role of government.
Okay, yeah.
Trump believes in a smaller, less intrusive government, whereas Harris seems to favor a more active role for the government in addressing social and economic issues.
And that difference in philosophy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to have ripple effects across every single issue.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the core of their platforms.
Okay, well, this has been really insightful. Is there anything else that's sort of on your mind when you think about this election?
One thing that strikes me is that neither candidate is really addressing this head on.
What's that?
The rise of artificial intelligence and automation.
Oh, yeah.
This could potentially displace millions of workers across various sectors.
Yeah.
Regardless of who's in the White House.
That's a really good point. Something to think about for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground today. Everything from border walls to healthcare. And it's clear that this election is going to have a big impact on the future of the country. So stay informed, stay engaged, and get out there and vote. Your voice matters. Thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.